For millennia, we have looked at the stars and asked the same question. Are we alone in the universe? We send signals into the void, we build giant telescopes, hoping to catch at least a whisper from the abyss. But what if the answer doesn't come in the form of a radio signal? What if one day, it just flies by? In October 2017, that may be exactly what happened. Astronomers in Hawaii, working with the Pan-STARRS telescope, noticed something no one had ever seen before. A faint object moving at an incredible speed, about 196,000 miles per hour. But it wasn't the speed that struck them, it was the trajectory. This object did not come from our solar system. It was a guest from interstellar space. It was given the Hawaiian name Oumuamua, which means scout or first distant messenger. And this messenger behaved very, very strangely. First, its shape. Judging by how it reflected sunlight, it was not an asteroid or a comet. It was not round. Calculations showed that the object was elongated, perhaps 10 times longer than it was wide. Imagine a cigar or a shard the length of a football field, tumbling through space. We have never seen anything like it. But the real mystery was yet to come. As they watched it leave our system, astronomers noticed an anomaly. Oumuamua was accelerating. It was deviating from the trajectory calculated by the laws of gravity. It was as if something was pushing it. This is normal for comets. When they approach the sun, the ice on their surface vaporizes, creating a reactive thrust that pushes the comet forward. But telescopes, including Hubble and Spitzer, detected no gas tail around Oumuamua. No dust. No signs of outgassing. It was accelerating for no apparent reason. As if it had its own engine. It was then that Loeb, at the time the chair of Harvard University's astronomy department, put forward his shocking theory. He suggested that Oumuamua was not a natural object. He stated that the only logical explanation for its shape and strange acceleration was that Oumuamua is an artificial object. Perhaps it was an ultra-thin solar sail, a technology where a spacecraft is propelled by the pressure of sunlight. Maybe it was a working probe, or just a fragment of an alien ship, drifting in space for millions of years. The scientific community was in turmoil. Most scientists insisted on a natural origin, proposing exotic explanations, from a hydrogen iceberg to an unusual nitrogen shard broken off a Pluto-like planet. But no single theory could explain all of Oumuamua's oddities. Unfortunately, we noticed it too late. By the time we realized how unusual it was, the Scout was already leaving our solar system forever, taking its secrets with it. We had no chance to get a closer look. So what was it? A unique natural phenomenon that science cannot yet explain? Or was it the first physical contact? The first undeniable proof that we are not alone in the universe, which we simply missed. Today on Project Unsolved, we will delve into the details of this event. We will analyze all the pros and cons, consider the arguments of skeptics and proponents of the artificial origin theory, and try to understand who or what sent us this distant messenger. To understand just how unlike anything we've seen Oumuamua was, let's break down its anomalies. This isn't just one strange fact, but a whole chain of events that doesn't fit standard models. Anomaly 1. Shape. How do we determine the shape of an object millions of miles away that is just a point of light? By the change in its brightness. Oumuamua periodically became brighter and then dimmer, with a tenfold difference in brightness. This is a huge indicator. The only explanation is that the object was not spherical. It was tumbling, presenting first its long side, then its narrow end to the sun calculations showed its length was at least 5 to 10 times its width. Some scientists suggested it could be a cigar-shaped nitrogen iceberg that broke off from a Pluto-like exoplanet. Others said that perhaps it wasn't a cigar, but a flat pancake, or shard, that we were simply seeing edge on. The problem is that objects of such an extreme shape are almost never found in nature. Gravity tends to make everything more or less round. Ufologists immediately pointed to the obvious similarity with the classic cigar-shaped UFOs described by eyewitnesses around the world. Such an elongated shape is ideal for minimizing damage from collisions with interstellar dust at enormous speeds. The ship kind of pierces through space, exposing a minimal area to impact. For them, the shape was the first and most obvious sign of artificiality. Anomaly 2. Acceleration without a tail. This is perhaps the biggest mystery. As we've said, Oumuamua accelerated as it moved away from the sun. The only natural mechanism known to science for such acceleration in comets is so-called outgassing. Solar heat vaporizes ice, and the erupting jets of gas act like small rocket engines. But Oumuamua had no tail. None at all. The Hubble Space Telescope, the most powerful instrument at our disposal, watched it closely and saw not the slightest sign of gas or dust. Scientists, trying to save the natural origin hypothesis, came up with several ideas. Perhaps the comet was made of pure hydrogen ice. Hydrogen molecules are transparent, and we wouldn't have seen them with a telescope. The problem: hydrogen icebergs, according to calculations, should evaporate very quickly in interstellar space. It's unlikely such an object would have made it to us. Others suggested that the gas could have been released so uniformly from the entire surface that it didn't create a visible tail. But this is also extremely unlikely and doesn't explain the strength of the push. Professor Loeb offered a simple and elegant solution. The object was being pushed by solar radiation itself. The pressure of sunlight is a real physical force, but it is incredibly weak. For it to noticeably accelerate an object the size of a football field, that object would have to be incredibly thin and light. Like a sail. An artificial solar sail. This technology is considered one of the most promising for interstellar travel. Anomaly 3. Trajectory and origin. Oumuamua wasn't just flying by. It was moving relatively slowly with respect to the stars nearest to us. This means it wasn't ejected from some star system as a result of a cataclysm, like a typical asteroid. It was in a so-called local standard of rest, as if it were just drifting in space until our solar system ran into it. This fact was simply classified as a statistical anomaly. Scientists say that out of billions of objects, there will always be one with unusual parameters. The view of artificial origin proponents. They see this as another clue. If you want to place a network of reconnaissance probes or buoys in space, you wouldn't launch them chaotically. You would place them in the local standard of rest, so they cover a certain area of space, waiting for star systems to pass through this network themselves. Oumuamua's trajectory fits perfectly with the concept of such a scout buoy. The version of esotericists and psychics. Here the theories become even bolder. Some mediums claim to feel a consciousness on board Oumuamua. They described it not as a ship with a crew, but as a fully automated probe whose mission is to collect data. They claimed its acceleration was a deliberate maneuver to correct its course after the gravitational influence of our sun and continue its mission to another star. So, what are we left with? On one hand, there's science, which, to explain Oumuamua, has to invent objects we've never seen. Hydrogen icebergs or nitrogen shards of extreme shape. Each of these explanations solves one problem, but creates several others. On the other hand, there's the hypothesis from the Harvard professor. An artificial object. A solar sail. This theory, like Occam's razor, explains all the anomalies in one fell swoop. The elongated shape, the acceleration without a tail, and the strange trajectory. Yes, it's an incredible proposition. But is it any less incredible than a pile-up of exotic natural hypotheses? Perhaps Oumuamua was just space debris, a fragment of a long-dead civilization, silently drifting through eternity. Or maybe it was a deliberately sent scout, now flying towards the next star system, carrying in its memory data about us, about a planet of blue water full of life. One thing we know for sure. It proved that interstellar travelers exist. Now the main question is, will they all be made of ice and rock? So what's the bottom line? We are left with a mystery without a clear answer. Like a detective arriving at a crime scene when all the evidence has gone cold and the main witness has disappeared over the horizon. We can accept the official scientific position. To do so, we would have to believe in the existence of an object that has an extremely elongated, never-before-seen natural shape, is made of an exotic material, like solid hydrogen or nitrogen ice, which we have never detected, and most importantly, is capable of accelerating with no visible cause and without a single trace. Essentially, to prove that Oumuamua is not artificial, scientists have to describe an object that is itself almost as fantastic as an alien ship. But what if we look at it from another angle? What if Loeb is right? What if it really was a technological artifact? This doesn't necessarily mean little green men. It could have been a research probe, a beacon, a solar sail launched millions of years ago by a civilization that may no longer exist. Think about this. We are searching for extraterrestrial intelligence by listening to radio waves. But what if advanced civilizations long ago abandoned such primitive methods of communication? What if they communicate in ways we can't even imagine? then the only way to detect them would be to search for their space junk, or active probes. Oumuamua could have been the very first message in a bottle, tossed into the cosmic ocean. And the most interesting part is, we may get an answer soon. In a few years, the Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile will begin operations. It is expected to detect one interstellar object every month. If they all turn out to be ordinary comets and asteroids, then Oumuamua was most likely just an incredible natural anomaly. But if we start finding other objects with strange acceleration, with unusual shapes, without gas tails, then the Harvard professor's hypothesis will no longer seem so fantastic. A world in which Oumuamua was just a rock is the world we know. But a world in which Oumuamua was a ship is a completely different universe. It's a world where we are no longer the smartest life form in our cosmic neighborhood. And that changes everything. Ultimately, Oumuamua left us not with answers, but with the right questions. It forced us to look at the sky in a new way. We now know that visitors from other star systems are flying past us. And as for who the first of these visitors was, a freak of nature or someone's scout? For now, this case remains unsolved. What do you think? Write your theory in the comments. Was it a rock or a ship? Subscribe to Project Unsolved to search for answers to the biggest mysteries of our world together.